Welcome. You've splash landed into this Prosecco-laden podcast, straight into the woo-woo pool with the crew of Ohm-g. We're just a simple group of tragically imperfect and highly empathic BFFs, exploring a wide range of atypical topics with humor, grace, and curiosity. This is Ohm-g. Welcome. The topic today is trauma. Do you save the drama for your mama? Or do you create drama from your trauma? Let's talk about it. You're here with the crew of Ohm-g,
the podcast. Welcome back, y'all.
Welcome. We are talking about trauma and drama.
And a little bit of mamas and llamas.
What else? All right. So who wants to take this discussion? Who wants to take the lead on this discussion? Everybody's a little scared too.
It's like we all want to have this conversation, but we're all like,
Nose goes.
I'm feeling pretty good. Do we jack with that?
well, maybe we do.
Maybe we do.
It's like halfway between I don't know where to start and do I really want to call it out?
Mm-hmm.
And also, who's going to listen? And are they going to be offended?
Well, what's in your box, Pandora?
Oh my God, I love that name. Welcome to the stage, the 10 tapping toes of Pandora. If I ever do drag, that'll be my name. I think, well, for me, I was just thinking about who's listening and are they offended or whatever. And I just heard Oprah say, that has nothing to do with you. Shout out, girl, if you're listening. But yeah, that has nothing to do with us. And that's not our problem if they are offended. But it made me think of this article I read once about writing about people that you're close to, or like in writing about your life or personal experiences or blog posts or whatever. And this likelihood with talking about our last episode with social media and people seeing things and following you, that there are people that are close to you that you're probably writing about that are going to read what you wrote and might remember things differently or see it differently from their perspective and be butthurt or offended. And they argued in their article something along the lines of, if they wanted to be written about differently, they should have acted differently. And I was like, that part. So
I also think, like, for not everybody in our lives, but like a lot of things that I've written about in my blog posts or my newsletters for the podcast, apparently the family heard about it and it got passed around.
Right.
And then, everybody was upset because, Brenda Sue was writing about her stuff. But I think, oh, geez, y'all, I just totally lost my train of thought. Don't you hate it when that happens?
I do hate that.
Kind of like showing your ass in church. You just
Right.
don't go
Don't
there.
do it. And
You keep it under wraps and you respect your family.
right. But, I feel like also they did the best that's where I was going with it. Sorry about that. They did the best that they could in the place that they were and with the knowledge that they had.
Yes.
So I feel like, with the experiences that we have all had collectively, like we have grown out of those experiences as well.
Yeah.
And I had a reading with someone one time and she said, well, if you hadn't had those experiences, you wouldn't have known how to rise up. So I brought those experiences into my life. Maybe before I came into this life, I was like, I want to have this family or these people around me in order to grow and be able to be who I am today, because we wouldn't be who we are today without that crap.
Without the strife. And we talked
Yeah.
about this at that wicked little killer party we went to last night up in Bethania, that before we incarnate into this lifetime, we pick our chart based on the lessons we need to learn. We pick our parents, we pick our friends and everyone we encounter, so we can walk through the fire, get baptized, whatever, and grow from those experiences.
Yeah.
And this is Chandra. And I think the other part of it is we have to kind of put ourselves in kind of like the generic spot, kind of look at it from everybody's perspective, because just like we were talking about, we had pictures made of ourselves and we were all kind of like critiquing our own pictures because we were looking at it through our perspective and our
Right.
lens.
Yeah.
But then you hand the thing over to somebody else that loves you and they think you look beautiful.
Yeah.
So you're looking at it from within in your own perspective. And so any family members that may be reading it, they're not looking at it through your eyes. They're looking at it through their own eyes,
Yes.
Right.
like their own experiences and their own lens. And it's like, not that what you wrote was be all end all truth, and not that
Right.
the way they took it was the be all end all truth. Like it was, either perspective was shaded and
Mhm.
and kind of altered by the lens that you're viewing it through. So it's, if, like you said, if they're offended or they're butthurt, we kind of have to like still look at it and go, "Oh, I'm offended because of the way that I took it, or the way
Sure.
that I perceiving it, not necessarily the words that were said, or even the meaning behind the words."
Right.
Well, I think a lot of people, like all of us, we can see something in our life that we have taken on as a trauma that other people might not look at as a quote unquote trauma. Like
Mhm.
I wasn't beaten or
Assaulted or yes.
right. But, these certain circumstances in life may have created trauma for me personally, which makes me react or act in a certain way because of the circumstances of things that happen. So I think we should get specific, because I think other people want to hear about our own traumas
Yes.
and how we have healed those things so that we don't create drama
Mhm.
in our lives from our trauma.
You know,
Go ahead, Camille.
I was going to say, when I first came to North Carolina, I went to this writer's workshop up in Little Switzerland, North Carolina. And during one of the sessions, this writer, who has several published books, told me, if you are writing a book for your mother to read, you are not ready to be a writer yet.
Mm.
That's all I have to say about that.
Wow.
Damn.
So which trauma we want to talk about first, y'all? We want to talk about religious trauma. We want to talk about family trauma. We want to talk about what y'all want to talk about?
Girl, so much of those are interconnected. I feel like
Yeah.
for you and I, at least. And I feel like we were having a bit of a discussion, like a prompt before we started recording, and everybody's got a little bit of religious trauma, you know.
Mhm.
It is the South.
It is the South. We're in the buckle of the Bible Belt, baby. So, I mean, for me, like, mine might be quick, but I didn't have to go to like a Catholic school or a Christian school, whatever, but I was homeschooled by my mom, who was the daughter of a Baptist preacher. And so I had to beg to go to public school, and finally got to go in high school. And she didn't want me to go, I think probably because it was secularized. And so, like, I mean, in 10th grade, when I was in public school, we were learning about evolution and biology. She's like, you don't have to believe that. And I'm like, girl, I'm doing a homework assignment. Like, it's not like a beliefs thing. It's just like, I'm doing this for a grade, And so I think that I try to think of my parents and my experience with them growing up as exactly what Brenda said. Like, they did the best that they could during that time with what they knew and the tools that they had.
Yeah.
And once they've known better, they've done better,
That's a powerful thing when it comes to forgiving people, by the
Mhm.
way,
Mhm.
is repeating that.
Yeah.
Well, and the personal responsibility of figuring out how to do better,
Yeah. 100%.
because
Mhm.
some people don't ever want to do better.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think from their perspective, they were not like they have done the best that they can based on their experiences in life and what they allow themselves to be open to.
Mhm.
So there's only so far that you can grow from that if you keep your limited belief system,
Yes.
which we all have different limiting beliefs, but like with the whole, evolution thing, like I never learned that in school because I was homeschooled.
Right.
Then I went to Seventh-day Adventist school. And so I never learned evolution
Right.
or like regular science, really.
Mhm.
So I feel like I really missed out on that. Like
Mhm.
once I was in college and getting my associate's degree
Mhm.
and stuff, it was like I was learning everything for the first time,
Yeah.
which was really weird because there I was, 40 plus years old learning this stuff for the first time. And I felt like so behind because I was in there with all these young kids and they had already been learning about it in high school. But, your dad grew up that way.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And then I guess your mom did as well, not believing in evolution. And so
Yes.
it's just really, really bizarre to me that people limit themselves so much to not even like take it into their awareness, whether they want to believe it or not, but not to just like, they don't even want to hear it. It's just like, it's not a thing we want to even like pretend to think about that it could have existed.
Well, it's funny because my middle brother is like in school to become a pastor. And so we all went out for my mom's birthday recently, and we were talking. He was a big part of a church. I think it was a Baptist church. I'm not really sure. And so my husband and I were driving with him to the restaurant, and he was like talking about this experience that he had and how there was this woman who was at this church who, from my understanding of him telling it, she was like opening portals. And not like in the church, but like I know everyone has everyone's just perked up. What? And so he was talking about like just how wrong that was and how whatever, you know. And so I'm just like I'm just like in the passenger seat, and Christian's driving like, see how this turns out, you know. And so he said that she gave him a book. It was like about Christianity and God and white Jesus and whatever, but it also was a portals and like energy, and it was kind of like a woo take on Christianity is what it sounded like. And so he and a pastor friend went home and tried to burn the book, and the book wouldn't burn.
That's what I'm talking about.
And so that freaked him out, and he ended up having like a panic attack about something else later, and like he ended up leaving the church. And they were like, the church sounded very cult-like because they also kind of shunned this woman.
I mean, don't they all sound kind of cool?
I mean, period. Okay. Yeah. But so he was trying to explain to Christian and I that like not all churches are like this, like that they're not all culty and whatever. And so we were like, yeah, we get that, but because he's invited us to church several times and whatever, you know, I know the intent is well, and that's coming from a place of care and whatever. But for me, it's literally about like two things. One, waking up early on a weekend day.
Right.
Jokes aside, I'm fucking tired. And two, it's that whole socialization aspect of like being intimate with people out of like obligation, and in this social setting where like they need to know things about you and you need to know things about them, and you have to get together. And then if you miss a Sunday or two, like, oh, where have you been? And we're like, I don't do that bullshit. You know what I mean? So like,
Your church.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting in church right now. That's exactly how I feel. And so when I sort of explained spirit circles, he was like, what? And so it wasn't clicking. Like, I think he just thinks, and probably my mom and whomever else, but I think that they probably think, oh, well, Aaron and Brenda are just so out there. They're just so into the woo that it doesn't make sense. They're talking to dead people and they're conjuring demons.
Devil's got him.
Devil's got him. And it's like, I feel, and I don't feel like this is coming from a place of ego, but and I love my family, but I feel like out of the relatives that we've grown up and been around, like you and I are very Christ-like in that we treat everyone fairly and equally and don't discriminate against people based on their race or their religion or their gender, sexuality, whatever.
We just discriminate if they're jerk holes.
Yes.
So we don't want to be around jerk holes.
Exactly.
FDA, no dicks allowed.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Except for the big ones.
Well,
but I think...
And I cannot lie.
And I cannot lie. I'm sorry. That was longer than I thought it would be. That's what she said.
Ro here, so talking about the evolution and the Christian beliefs of, you know, how the world was created. Even as so I grew up Catholic, cradle Catholic here, from Hispanic background. And so church is a big thing, you know, ceremony, you had to get baptized, you know, all of the things, sacraments, whatever. I was even a catechist, which is a religious teacher for the Catholic Church. Anyway, even as a child reading the creation story in the Bible, and then just, it seemed more like a fairy tale. It felt like reading Grimm's fairy tales or something like that, because none of it made frickin' sense. Well, that's logically, I mean, even in my child brain, I'm like, how did they get two of each animal onto this ark? And
from the Arctic, no less.
How do they not kill each other off? You know, it's like the lions would want to eat everything, you know. Well, in my child's mind, none of that made sense. So I guess I was doomed from the beginning.
Well, but that's what I was going to say, is that a lot of what I felt like my trauma from the religious background perspective was, like Rosalie said, even at a younger age, I would sit there and I would listen, but I would think to myself, that's such a narrow-minded perspective. There's got to be more to this than just that.
Because that's you, even as a young person or as a child, already having that critical thinking piece of like, this is not fit, so there's got to be something more.
Right.
And why would you shut any?
And I'm like you, I'm sitting there listening to those stories, and even in my mind, I'm going, why can't all these people sitting around me see that these are parables, that this book is written by man? Yes, maybe it's inspired by God, maybe it is,
Right.
Maybe.
but it's still being filtered through a human brain. And so how is the human brain going to assimilate godlike information? Well, it's going to tell a story.
Right.
So this is telling a story to get a point across that God is trying to get across these people,
Right.
so they can tell other people to help them understand it. It's not that the whale swallowed Jonah.
Right.
This is a story to explain a concept to you. But everybody there is going, praise the whale. I mean, you know,
You should say praise the whale, first of all.
I'm on it. Thank you.
it's like, you know, and
It's frustrating.
It was very frustrating.
Yeah.
Right. I felt so squashed. Like I felt like mentally, like intellectually, that it was suffocating.
And if you argued a point
Yes.
and tried to argue a point,
Rosalie, I'm going to pray for you.
they squished me. Yeah.
Bless your heart.
Yeah. It was like, well, the Bible says, so that's the way it is.
Right. I've been asked to leave the church. I feel you.
No, nothing. But
Well, and I'm not saying that what it's saying is wrong. I'm just saying that it's
yeah.
Not
It is.
questionable.
And-
right.
So if this is right, you know, and then, like I said, Grimm's fairy tales, well, how do people imagine this stuff if it's not real or if it's whatever? I want, you know, to see the big bad wolf myself, you know, or the three little pigs that talk or, you know, whatever. But okay, just I'm cutting myself off because it's
She can go on and on.
forever, but
Don't get herself wrapped up.
I will.
Rode up as we
Yeah.
It's like people who say, and how do you believe in that astrology? Well, how do you believe that a snake talked to a person and convinced them to eat an apple and contributed to the downfall of mankind?
Right.
That's a whole nother episode.
I think we're going to talk more about this when we come back because I got some stuff to say about that.
Mhm.
But on that note, we're going to take a quick little break and we'll be right back, y'all. Go fill up your glass. And now we're back, y'all. I forgot to turn my microphone on. So we can talk about religious trauma for days. But
on or off the mic, doesn't matter.
on the mic, I could just talk about that forever. So let's go back to like trauma in general and how we process it. And I think we should do one on religious trauma and the similarities between like the woo world and religion and why we separate ourselves so much from each other and what the similarities are and the differences. But that's another episode.
Maybe that's a mini series.
That
Yeah.
is.
But talking back on like childhood family trauma, my parents, I love y'all, I really do, but they use religion a lot as the guilt. Like,
Mhm.
you know, Jesus wouldn't like it if you did that now, or Jesus is going to be disappointed. And I would be,
How are you going to feel when you have to answer to Jesus for that? When you stand
Yeah.
before Him?
yeah, I'm going to feel okay.
Almost as a Santa's always watching.
Right. It's the same thing though, right?
It absolutely, it's a scare tactic. It's
Yeah.
fear.
Yeah. So why would anybody want to be religious? But anyway, going back to the like family stuff, whenever I would get in trouble, my mother, it was very important to her not to use anger within her punishings, which I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
Yes.
But she did use God. So it would,
You know,
I'm not angry with God. Yeah.
One is a little disappointed, but
Right. So it would be like you had to write Bible verses or you had to read this much of the Bible or of some other religious texts from the Seventh-day Adventist religion. So now, you know, I'm always getting the religious literature. Yo, I haven't opened up my birthday present. Yeah.
another episode.
Okay, that's another episode too. But it's like, why do they have to use something to create this feeling of fear to make you behave or make you behave the way they want you to behave.
Right.
I don't know that anything that ever did was really awful, but I didn't kill nobody when I was a kid. Now, did I?
Now, her adulthood is a little bit of a difference.
Now, y'all, I did steal a pack of gum one time. I was like 7 or 8.
You did not commit adultery. You did not covet your neighbor's ass. I mean, I don't know about the rest.
Yeah, but I did have to go back to that store and give the gum back and tell them I was sorry.
That was appropriate.
Yeah, it totally was. But anyway, I'm sure we could go on and on about trauma and family stuff. Mine mostly is around religion. So you guys kick off with whatever your family trauma was.
Well, when we were talking earlier about understanding now that we're doing the work, that they were operating from a place of wherever they were in their life, and they were doing the best that they could with the tools that they had. Well, I was talking to Camille about this actually just last night, but as I've started to try to do some of the work and figure out a lot of the reasons of, why I am the way I am, and starting to do a lot of like the self-acceptance of, okay, this is not a character flaw. This is just the way I was made, right? Even though it may not be something that I like about myself, it doesn't mean that I have to hate myself because of the thing, right? And a lot of that work, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, but, due to a lot of that type of work, I've come very late in life to realize that I was undiagnosed ADHD through my whole childhood.
Mm.
In trying to explain that to my mother, I was sharing with her an example of like what it actually sounds like in my head all the time.
Right.
So that she could like understand some of the things that I've dealt with. And in talking to her, one of the things that I said is, I hope you understand how lucky you were that I was at least smarter than the average bear. Like I had an intellectual level where I could come up with systems and things within myself to deal with this.
Yeah.
And not have it become, not let the noise get to the point where it became a behavioral problem for you, or that it affected my learning in any way, right? And one of the things that I said to her in that conversation was, like, if I didn't have the tools intellectually to have dealt with it at that young of age, can you imagine how hateful I would have been?
Mm.
And then I thought, holy shit.
Yep.
Because my grandmother, her mother, I loved her because she was my grandmother. I didn't necessarily like the person that she was.
Sure.
Like she was not a likable person. And I always joked and called her queen of the narcissists. And I joked that it was like she was the center of the universe and everything else had to revolve around her. But when I said that to her, it occurred to me, my grandmother had a 6th grade education. Like, what if she was also ADHD? Like, what if she had all this noise in her head 24/7 and she didn't have the capability to deal with it?
Right.
And then I started looking at a lot of the things that she did. Like, she had no sense of direction. Like, she would go to the same place every day, but if she had to tell you how to get there, she couldn't do it. Like, she couldn't tell you what street we turn on or what the name of the road is. And that is one of the symptoms of ADHD. You have a hard time telling left from right or north from south or and things like that. She was forever stimming in some way, picking at her fingers or playing games so that she didn't have to have conversations. Like, because it's
Stillness is the enemy.
well, but when you have all that noise in your head, you have to do something to tune out the noise around you.
Yep.
Because otherwise you get really, really overstimulated.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just looking back at some of these things, I could really, as I started to learn more about it for myself, I could really start to see that it really, really looks like that's what was wrong with her. And then I did a little bit more investigating and I read an article. They hadn't done a study yet, but they had come across several instances where, especially in older adults that had been undiagnosed, that undiagnosed ADHD came across as a narcissistic behavior disorder. Like, it would appear that these people were either bipolar or narcissistic behavior disorder. And I'm like, well, there you go.
All the pieces fit.
Right. But, and whether that's all true or not, it gave me the ability to forgive her for a lot of the things that she did.
Mm-hmm.
Very important.
Yeah. Because I could see how if she was dealing with some of the things that have the noise in my head didn't affect me as much when I was younger, but as I've gotten older, and obviously as you get older, cognitively, you start to slow down,
Sure.
And that's when it really started to affect me more. And just thinking about, her not having really any tools, or, back then they didn't even really have a name for it. It gave me a lot of grace for her.
Yeah. It's like you saw from a different perspective.
Right. And it's been actually very healing.
Huge personal growth.
Yeah. But I still find myself being triggered by things that she said to me. Like, even though I've been able to understand her and forgive her, like, still when, Jason says that one thing, or, I hear somebody talk about something that she used to say about me.
Yeah.
It still triggers me. So I know there's still a lot of work to do, but, I'm still dealing with, even though I've been able to see it in a different light, there's still a lot of trauma from that relationship that,
of course.
Yeah, I'm still having to deal with.
I wonder if even if you have the awareness of it and you understand it on a intellectual level, can you still not be triggered by it? I think you would still feel maybe not reactive, or it would probably still be a trigger and create some sort of feeling in your body.
I'm only human, but the knowledge helps.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know that could ever go away. Even if you understand where it comes from, it just becomes less intense, I think. Don't you think?
Yeah. But I mean, it's still like, kind of self-love work that you have to do.
Sure.
It's like, this is not a real example. It's just like a stupid, simple, like, if someone told you for your whole life that your hair was ugly, and then even though you realize why that person would say that now, but tomorrow some stranger goes, you have the ugliest hair I've ever seen. It's still going to trigger
you right back to that place.
To being 5 years old or whatever. And, rather than having the self-awareness in that moment to go, I wonder what's wrong with it. I wonder what's happened in their life that they feel like they have to push that.
Project their shit.
Right. Project their pain onto somebody else. Immediately you go back to the 5-year-old child that felt dissed or whatever,
Totally.
So yeah, I'm like you. I still think it's going to be triggered until you do the self-love work to realize that, honey, that's your opinion. You can have your opinion and I'll have mine when I get home.
Yeah.
And if we ever get there, y'all, we'll let you know.
Exactly.
It's a long and winding road.
It is. Yeah. I think it brings an awareness to it. But I think that you're still triggered. And so it might be over time less intense, or it might be.
To what extent you get triggered. Like you may get triggered, but if you can immediately go to, okay, there's something in their life. They're projecting onto me. It's not that
Totally.
It's not me that they're hating something else, and they have to project it off onto someone else.
I mean, even just having that awareness and that thought is transformative.
Yeah.
Because it takes the awareness and understanding to realize that they're going through something or have been through something, instead of taking it personally.
And it stops you from spiraling on it.
100%. Yeah. And they're working through therapy, which just story of my life, but also probably a future episode. So much of my life has been about people pleasing and wanting to be accepted by others because I wasn't as a kid and felt different for being gay and yada, yada, yada. And so we, in a recent session, worked through. So I was long story of time traveling trauma. Short is that it was a lady at church, and she printed out some MySpace things that I had posted, just saying why can't people just treat everyone equally? I thought the golden rule was love thy neighbor. Why don't we
Jesus stuff.
a little bit? You know what I mean? It's like, why don't we hang with prostitutes? You know what I mean? Why don't we talk to the lovers? Call me crazy. But anyways,
Crazy.
So just call me. But so this bitch at church printed out whatever I had said, but it was this specifically was taking up for gay people. So she had printed it out, showed my mom, who is not aware, I guess, that I had a MySpace or that whatever. And so she's like, I'm really worried about Aaron. We're just praying for him. And it just seems like he's talking about himself and blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, I'm getting spat on. I'm getting cursed at. I'm having things thrown at me in PE class in high school. It was really, really horrible. And so me writing something about treating people equally. It shouldn't be the problem, right?
Right.
But anyway, so I'll never forget finding out officially that my mom had seen that. And I guess I just think about like how I would have acted as a parent. And I get that in that moment, she did the best that she knew how to do with what she had. And I love her to death, but it wasn't enough. And so that has always stuck with me and still does. And I'm still working through it. But she asked me, you know, why do you feel that way? Why are you talking about these people on this thing that you posted or whatever? And I said, well, because I'm gay. And she said, no, you're not. Just immediately. And so then I think that just like was like I felt like I was thrown through a wall. And it was like, well, do I really know myself? Like I felt like I battled with this my entire life, and you're telling me that that's not true, that that's not my truth. And so does my opinion really matter? How do I feel validated? Like all this internal
well, that's an adult and that's my mother and that's my authority figure.
Yeah.
Do they really know something that I don't know?
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
So it really fucks with you mentally. And so then she was more so concerned with what the people in the church were going to think.
Oh, of course.
Rather than what the appearance. Yeah.
It matters in itself.
And so after that, she wanted to go to like a Christian, specifically Christian therapist and counselor or whatever. I don't think we ever ended up doing that. I don't recall, or maybe I blocked it out. But I do remember a doctor's visit we went to one time. And I was taken under the premise, I was 14, so I was a freshman in high school. And it was under the premise that it was a physical. So I just needed to get like blood work done. Like there's lots of diabetes on my mom's side of the family, whatever. And so they did some blood work and they did like a physical and stuff. And she was
Did
like,
the diabetes make you gay?
it's the sugar. It's the sugar, baby. So, not the sugar. I got the sugar. I'm there. It's craving, dear. So she told the doctor, she said,
The sugar.
She said, can you check for testosterone levels? And the doctor was like, well, sure, but I mean, everything, like, that doesn't seem like anything alarming. Like, he seems fine. And she's like, well, I'd really prefer if you would check for testosterone levels, like, just to see where he's at on that. And went through this whole thing with how there's a chemical imbalance in my brain. Like, so she's saying all of these things, right? And so in therapy a couple weeks ago, we worked through, that's what she's saying. But the message that sweet baby 14-year-old me took was something is wrong with you inherently that you can never change. There's a defect. You will never be good enough.
And my parents think that there's a defect.
Yes. And so that was huge. And so breaking through that to realize as a 30-year-old man who's in a happily married to a gay man, have dogs, on home, career, master's degree, yada, yada, yada. So much was, I'm worthy. Look at me. Look what I can do. Like Stuart from fucking Mad TV. I said, look what I can do, you know, but so much of that was to prove to the outside world, like, look how good I am. Look how smart I am. Look how capable. And in reality, it was me I was proving it to all along.
Yeah.
And so at 30, like feeling that and being like, I'm a kick-ass person and maybe one day will parent a kid in such a different way.
Oh my gosh, you just made me think of this awesome, I guess, sentence I read recently. Are you actively being the person that you needed as a child?
Okay, I just have cold chills everywhere because kids have asked me why I became a teacher, and that's what I tell them.
Okay.
Is that I became a teacher to be who I needed when I was younger. And some think it's sweet, but most of the time people are like, what? Because they're 12. But, you know.
They're not people yet.
But
They don't know yet.
they don't know yet. But when I see my little gays and lesbians who are not fully aware of that yet,
Yeah.
I see my Black kids and my Hispanic kids that are treated differently. And I see my, Muslim kids who are hated on because of their religion and whatever. And it was National Teacher Day recently. And so I had them write to anyone in the building. So I had one sweet kid write to the janitor. I had one sweet kid write to the cafeteria lady, Miss Cheryl. And she cried. She was like, oh, I was like, yes, Miss Cheryl. It's so cute. And so many of them wrote to me. And one girl was like, I've never had a father figure in my life. And you're like, I call you my dad, but you're like my dad. And Another girl said, I'm sorry things didn't work out with your son, but you always have me as your daughter. It was just like very like, you know, like
Father of many.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So
I think a lot of us have felt that rejection in childhood. Of mine came through the religious rejection because, you know, if you were bad and you did something wrong, you disappointed God and he's the be all end all, right? So then you must be a really bad person and need to repent for your sins, even though you don't know what the hell you did.
Yeah.
So I think that goes on many layers, whether it's, you know, through religion or through being different, being gay or being a different colored skin or being the fat kid growing up or
Some marginalized group.
yeah.
right. So
Of any description.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think everyone can relate to that rejection wound. I think that's what it is. It's the rejection wound and not feeling accepted by the masses. So I think a lot of that work is like to accept ourselves. And that's the hardest of all, right? Because even though we may think that we do, we still seek some sort of outward approval. Does this person like the way that I look or the way that I talk? Or do they approve that I have a master's degree or that I don't have a master's? Do they disapprove because I don't have one? Because we talked about that in an episode too, about going back to school to, you know, I was going to go back and get my master's degree. And I got to the bottom of that because I wanted people to take me seriously and to think that I was smart or that I was capable or that I could do more than I'm doing right now.
Right.
So I'm just coming to the place to like fully accept myself 197%.
Yes.
Right.
That's
And-
progress, boo.
Yeah. Just trying to accept who I am and what I have to offer the world because I have something. It's not for everybody,
Right.
but it's going to be for somebody. Right.
Well, and the fact if it's only for one person, that makes a difference.
It makes it
Right.
worth it. And those people are finding you. I don't know if it was this episode or the last one we talked about abundance and how you're manifesting that, like with the festival yesterday, with like summer solstice is coming up, with Woo Wisdom, like all these different things where like new clients are coming to you, people are rebooking, like people are experiencing you and your sessions and your energy healing and you tuning in and they're realizing, wow, she has a gift and she can help me grow on my own spiritual path, you know, and you don't need a piece of fucking paper for that.
No, and I think we all have to kind of find that within ourselves, whatever it may be.
Let me ask this. Devil's advocate, is trauma a gift?
Ooh, girl.
I don't think I would call it a gift, but I do think it is, like we were talking about earlier, it's kind of like the impetus for the lesson.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we've come to Earth School for.
Yeah.
We said, we want to learn this and this and this.
Yep.
And, you know, it's kind of like the break you down first before you can, you know, it's just like building a house. You have to dig a deep hole.
Yes.
And lay a foundation before you can build the house. And so I feel like a lot of the trauma that we all experience as children is dependent on what lessons we said we wanted to learn in this existence. So how deep of a hole did we need for how big of a foundation to finally build what we said we wanted?
We are building our houses, y'all. We are. We're building freaking castles.
We're building our mansions in the sky.
Yes.
Hallelujah.
And then when she asked that, the first thing I thought of was getting coal on Christmas morning. I'm like, it's a gift, but like not what you signed up for. So you just do the best you can with it.
Yeah.
I do. Speaking of trauma, I do want to give a shout out to Melissa Sparrow.
Oh, yeah.
Who's been I guess on the show before, but I had an Akashic Records reading with her, and she told me shit about myself.
She is the real fucking deal, y'all. If y'all have not listened to the episode or investigated her more, Melissa Sparrow, I think it's Melissa Sparrow Healing on social media and Instagram. She's wonderful.
She's amazing. But what she was telling me is that in a past life, it had been more of a life of open love. Like there had been a lot of love given and received. It was just a more kind of open, loving space. And so I kind of felt like I had mastered that.
Yeah.
And so I needed to learn how to do that as a human, like in a existence where love wasn't the predominant go-to emotion.
Right.
And so she started telling me about these things that I had made contracts with. And I'm like, so Melissa, what you're telling me is that I did it well in this other lifetime. And so I got cocky.
Right.
And I said, give me all the things because I've already mastered it. So just give me all the things and let me show you what I can do.
Right.
I'm like, I'm so stupid.
You wanted a challenge.
And I got one.
Yeah.
I got one. So it's kind of be careful what you ask for.
For sure. Yeah.
But there again, thankful because it gave me a whole different perspective on a lot of the things that I've experienced. So that was great.
Oh, absolutely. Well, if you liked this content, leave us a review wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, etc. And thank you so much for being with us today. I feel like this could definitely be extensions and future episode ideas for sure, because we all have been through some shit and trauma, whether it's family, religious, or otherwise. Especially in the woo community, I feel like so much of us are seeking validation and have been through shit and are trying to love and figure out ourselves. And so hopefully this resonated with some of you. Y'all are the reason that we do this, to make a community and form a community. So we love and appreciate you for being with us, and we'll see you next time.
See you on the next episode, folks.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. Please follow and subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a review. It's so easy to do and such a huge help for us. We appreciate your interactions so much. Want to join us at our table? Make sure to check out our YouTube channel and join our Facebook community. If you've enjoyed this content and wish to support us, take a look at our Patreon page. All information and links will be in our podcast description. Catch you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM. Women's voices amplified.